but is that who you want people to think of? You want people to think about you when they go into the voting booth, or do you want them to think that you're a competent, professional, experienced woman and you're a stay-at-home mom of three? So I guess I would say to women is don't sell yourself short. Okay. If men don't go out there and say, I have three children, I stay home, I do this. No, your job is to sell yourself as a candidate who is experienced and who can win and who will do a good job. So even if you are a stay-at-home mom or you work part-time or whatever your situation is, or you have children, don't have children, you want to sell yourself as the candidate first and as the other stuff after that. So that's a piece of advice I'd give to people. I guess the second thing is, go into it for the right reasons, because I look at running as like being pregnant. So I had about a 9-month candidacy. So being pregnant is great. And then you have the baby you have to raise. So don't forget that the whole point of running is to govern. And that, I'm thinking, is probably a lot harder than running. So be prepared for both things, for the pregnancy and for raising the baby.
I don't know. You're talking to two women who did not find pregnancy to be great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Raising kids is hard too, right?
But the raising kids part is great. So
Yeah. I always tell people if I didn't have to be pregnant again, sure, I'd raise other kids. But
maybe it's a poor analogy, but you get my point.
Yes.
No,
Yes.
definitely.
Well taken.
So I'll have to come with a different analogy.
No, it definitely works. Definitely. I know plenty of people who have said, "Oh, I'd love to be pregnant again. I just can't afford another baby." I actually do know lots of people. So
yeah, and the other thing is have a team.
Mhm.
So I saw other women in the area. They said, "Oh, I didn't have a campaign manager. It's only me." You have to have a team. So I was very, very fortunate that my husband not only is a wonderful husband, and he gave up a lot of time and effort, probably more time than me, because he spent a lot of time looking at the voter rolls and doing the targeting and doing the segmenting and all that kind of analytic stuff you do when you run a campaign. I had him to do that for me, and it was a huge, huge, huge help because we knew exactly what we were doing. It wasn't just random. We had a plan. So you have to have a campaign manager who knows what they're doing, and you have to have a plan. And I'll say one other thing is my husband and I don't always agree on everything, but when we were out there, he was not my husband. He was my campaign manager. And if he told me something, I saluted and did it. Not always at home. We'd get home and argue, but on the campaign trail, he was in charge, and that was great. I had people who came to my fundraiser and they volunteered for me and helped me. And the other piece of advice I'll give is you have to have, I don't know what to call it, a committee or a group of advisors. I had about half a dozen people whenever I had to make a major decision, like what do I say in my letter, or what should I put on my literature, or who should I be targeting at the end. I had these 6 people who I'd invite over, and they came up with great ideas, things I never would have thought of. So I had one approach, and I said, no, you need to do this, and we argue about it and we discuss it, and all the great ideas came out of that. So you have to remember, it really takes a village. Don't do it on your own. And don't ever think that you're the only person who has good ideas, because you have some good ideas, but other people around you will have better ideas, and you have to listen to them. Because if you don't do it as a team effort, it just, it's not going to come out well. And that's the other piece of advice I'd give is be humble and don't think you know it all, and just listen more than you talk. Because people will tell you stuff that's really important, and there are a lot of people out there who know more than you about stuff, so you really, really have to listen and be prepared to learn, and be prepared to change your mind about stuff, which I did about a lot of stuff along the way.
And to have a daughter who's in marketing and can make your signs for you.
Yeah, I didn't have to pay for that. Yeah, she works for a marketing company, and she said, "Mom, that'll be my contribution to your campaign." But yes, so fundraising for me was really hard. So they talked about I learned about fundraising as like concentric circles. So the middle circle is like your family and close friends, and they will give you money because you just have to ask them. They'll open up their wallets. And then around that is the next group. And then the last circle is people you don't know at all, and you have to get them to give you money. So I was lucky in my little campaign. I didn't have to go beyond the friends of friends. And when people heard about me running, I just got checks from everybody. In fact, I even got, you said some of your listeners are on Ravelry?
Yes, yes.
So I even had one lady on Ravelry, a complete stranger. She heard about my campaign. I wrote about it, and she said, "I really want to support you. I want to send you a check." So that meant so much to me that people had that confidence in me. So that was huge. But yeah, you have to have money, and you have to have fundraisers, and that's another hard thing you have to learn how to do is to ask people to give you money in addition to knocking on doors of strangers and figuring out what to say to them. 30 seconds. Lots of hard stuff. But if you just tell yourself, look, what's the worst that'll happen? They'll slam the door in my face. I had doors slammed in my face. I had one person who said, there's no soliciting here. So I said, well, I'm not soliciting, and this is protected by the First Amendment. And he said, here's your First Amendment slam. There was that. I knocked on doors of people who'd never voted before. I don't vote. I'm not registered. But you just have to just keep at it and just say to yourself, okay, one more door, one more door, one more door, one more door. And then you've knocked on 50 doors and you go home and you're exhausted and you wake up the next day and then you do it again. But yeah, you have to have the fire in you to do it, and you have to have the endurance. And I want to say one other thing about why I did it: the Women's March.
Mm.
The Women's March really, really inspired me, and that was, I think, for a lot of women, whether you went to the march, whether you watched the march, that was so impactful on me. And I said, you know what? If all these women can show up and get out and march, I can show up. And so I said, I'm going to show up. And I did. And I succeeded.
That's great. Did you knit a hat?
I knit 30 hats.
We've talked a lot about pussy hats on this show already.
I knit a lot of hats. It's another interesting story. So our other daughter who lives in Washington said, oh, I'm going to the march, because our second daughter knits. And said, can you knit me some hats? And I said, sure. So I made like 10 or 15. I sent them to her because she was going with all her friends. And then she called me up like a couple weeks before the march. She says, oh, well, my group has gotten bigger. Can you send some more? And I was like, oh, sure. How many? Like 20. I'm like, what? So I just was knitting every single spare moment. So I ended up knitting 25 for her. And then I went to a rally nearby in January. I think it was for the ACA, the Affordable Care Act. And I was wearing my pussy hat. It was my last pussy hat. I made it out of all the scraps left over from all the other pussy hats. It was all striped. It was all striped. And this lady came up to me there and she said, oh, I really love your hat. Can I buy it? And she pulled out her wallet. And I was like, this is my last hat. I gave all the other ones away. And I looked at her and I said, you take it. And so now she's like my friend. And so I've made a friend with her. So yeah, the pussy hats were great. And yeah, the Women's March was just so inspirational. And I think for women, it says, you know, we can do it. We can do anything we put our minds to. We can show up. We can march on Washington. We can march all over the world. You know, we can wear our ridiculous pink pussy hats and say, just take us seriously. We're not going away. We're here to stay. So that really inspired me too. And so we're all standing up now. And the question is, you know, what's coming next? What's our next challenge? What's our next battle?
Yeah, I think the battles will keep coming. So
they are.
And I was just in a yarn store and noticed that pink yarn is back in stock. So
I still have a box of it. Yeah. So.
Well, thank you very much, Marla, for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, thank you so much.
And thank you, Kelly and Sophie. It was a pleasure.
And it's always great to talk to a fellow knitter as well. So congratulations on your win. That's
thank you.
Yes.
Really, really exciting.
And I look forward to hearing about both of you standing up for office, whatever that may be. So be informed.
Apparently, my family is already taking bets on when I will be running for office. So we'll see which of them wins that bet.
There's lots of stuff out there. Doesn't have to all be a lot of work and a lot of time.
Hi, everybody. This is Kelly. Welcome back to Two Broads Talking Politics. This is our second segment of our episode about running for office. I am here, as usual, with my co-host, Sophie. Hi, Sophie.
Hey, Kelly.
And today we have a very special guest joining us. So this summer, a friend of mine had handed me a book and said, "You need to read this. I know you're interested in running for office someday." The book is called Every Day is Election Day, A Woman's Guide to Winning Any Office from the PTA to the White House. And I loved the book, and so we are thrilled to have the author of that book, Rebecca Sive, on the line with us today. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, and thanks you so much for having me.
Yes, thanks for joining us. So for our listeners, Rebecca has had a long career in writing. In addition to this book, she's written for the Huffington Post and Crane Chicago Business, among others. She's also been a lecturer at the University of Chicago, Harris School of Public Policy, was the founding program and academic director of the Women in Public Leadership program there, and has advised celebrities and business executives and candidates for office, and has had various government appointments as well. So we're so thrilled to have you here. We have a lot of people in our audience who are women thinking about running for office at some point or are in the midst of running for office. And so we're looking forward to this conversation.
Great. Well, it's a treat for me to talk about this. So, and I'm thrilled to hear you say that there are a lot of women out there among your listeners thinking about running for office, because it's a great time to do that.
Yes, definitely. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of just yourself and why you decided to write this book?
Well, I've lived in Chicago since college. I went to graduate school here in American history. But I guess as far as the book goes and all of that, a couple things. One is I grew up in a political family. My father ran for Congress when I was a young woman, or a young girl, I should say, and my mother was also very active, and they kind of taught me and my siblings that public service was really, the highest good. And so after I graduated from college, I was interested in political science. I just immediately in Chicago began working on various political and women's projects, and always with a mind toward advocacy for women's equal rights. So that just kept happening. And then after the 2008 election, or the Democratic primary, I realized that, we were just experiencing this revolution where a woman and an African American were the two leading candidates on the Democratic primary side. And that was just, who would have thought that could ever happen? And so what occurred to me after that, and after Barack Obama was elected, was that we really ought to collect and share the wisdom of, women who had been active politically, women who had run for office, women who had been elected, in hopes that, new generations would follow in Hillary's footsteps and other, women elected's footsteps. So I just decided that I would try to write this book. And of course, I'm not the only person who could have written it, but I just went ahead, and there you are, and we are. It's been a great experience to see how many women share this vision of the future.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I noticed, sort of looking at the book again in preparation to talk to you, was how much of this advice is really good advice, not just for women running for office, but for instance, there's a lot of good advice for women who want to be podcasters, or things that I have thought about and used in my career, my other career, and so I think a lot of this is just it's really good for women to think about leadership roles and just sort of not just winning office, but sort of taking themselves seriously and thinking about how far they can go.
I think you hit the nail on the head. Actually, originally I had another title in mind, but the whole idea was always, just as you've said, to talk about and write about lessons of leadership and lessons of asserting yourself in the public square. and on issues that matter to you and on causes that matter to you. And, whether that's as a